You never listen to a word I say, do you? It's like talking to a brick wall, but even a wall would be more responsive than you are right now.
Linda's chair scraped over the concrete. One leg crossed the property line. Her voice, sharp, rehearsed, cut the quiet air. I remember thinking, this is gonna get interesting. You'll hear from the HOA. A finger jabbed toward his face. Michael didn't move, arms folded, eyes steady, mouth curved just enough to say, I see you. Atlas stood between them, mane stirring in the heat. The lion's gaze swept her, then found him again. Michael blinked once. 3 clauses from the bylaws slid through his mind. He waited. She had no idea she'd already stepped into his game. Michael Harris had been through worse rooms than this, that porch. Courtrooms, boardrooms, the kind of places where people smiled while trying to gut you. He'd won most of those fights, not by yelling, not by pounding the table, by letting the other side believe they were safe, right up until they weren't. He hated arguments. Too loud, too messy. People said it was because he was calm. Truth was, he only moved when the ground under him was solid. Atlas shifted behind him, the faint click of claws on concrete carried in the still air. A reminder of who really owned this patch of ground. That lion wasn't a trophy, wasn't a pet. He'd been a promise made in the back room of a small-town vet clinic, the night his oldest friend put a trembling cub into Michael's hands. You'll keep him safe, the man had said. It wasn't a request. Michael had kept that promise for 13 years, fed him, trained him, built the space so the lion could live without chains. The neighbors had stared then too, just like Linda was staring now. He looked at her, and for a moment, the scene from last month's HOA meeting replayed. Linda's laugh, sharp, quick, when she'd used the phrase, for the good of the community, as if the words themselves were a shield, as if they erased the fact she'd never once asked. His thumb tapped the side of his watch, twice, a habit. It meant the clock had started. Linda didn't know it. Most people didn't. That was fine. Atlas moved again, just enough to adjust his stance. The scrape of claw on concrete sounded louder than it should have. Linda's eyes flicked down for half a second. Michael stayed on her. He'd been here before. Different players, same game. Let them think they were pushing you back. Let them step exactly where you wanted them to. The trick wasn't in stopping them, it was in making sure they crossed the line on their own. Then, all you had to do was show everyone else where the line had been. Linda didn't just show up. She arrived like she was clocking in. Clipboard under one arm, tripod in the other. That little red light on the camera already blinking. She planted it just inside her side of the property line, adjusted the lens, angled it straight at Atlas. The lion didn't move, didn't need to. His presence filled the frame before she even hit record. Michael watched her thumb press the button, watched her glance at the screen, satisfied. That was the look of someone sure they'd caught you. Later, there'd be an email. Subject line, safety concern, immediate action required. A few names copied in. The same names that always nodded when Linda spoke at HOA meetings. Michael had already counted them. 3 would flip if they saw the right thing. The rest would just follow whoever looked like they were winning. She leaned over the tripod, scribbling notes. The motion jostled her clipboard. A single red paperclip slid loose. It hit the concrete with a sound too small for her to notice. Michael noticed. He bent, picked it up, turned it once between his fingers, slipped it into his pocket. Linda kept talking, to herself, to the camera, about liability, negligence, public safety. Words meant to sound official, to weigh heavy in an inbox. Michael let her talk. The more she said now, the more there'd be to measure against later. It was always better when they gave you their own rope. Atlas shifted, just enough to tilt his head toward the camera. The faint sound of claws against concrete cut through her voice. Linda's pen paused mid-word. Her eyes darted to the lion. Michael stayed silent. Let the pause hang there, thick. Every second it lasted, the air got tighter. She broke it with a forced laugh, as if to shake it off. Packed up her notes, left the tripod standing. Michael's thumb tapped the watch. Once, twice. Some games start with a handshake. This one started with a red paperclip. Some things don't need shouting to be heard. You've probably had that moment, watching someone cross a line and knowing you'd handle it differently. If you want more stories where quiet wins loud, subscribe now and join us for the next move. Michael didn't touch the tripod, didn't tell her to leave. He just looked past her, toward the small table and 2 chairs he kept by the porch rail. Slowly, almost absently, he shifted them, one scrape at a time, legs of the table dragging closer to the property line, the chairs following, close enough now that anyone standing near them would look like they belonged there. Linda's eyes flicked over. She saw movement, saw space opening up, read it for what she wanted it to be. Concession. He let her. Silence works best when it lets the other side narrate their own victory. She stepped in to check the view from his side of the line. One shoe planted squarely where her camera could see it. The other followed without hesitation. Atlas stood a little taller. His frame filled the center of the shot. Only the side of Linda's arm and the curve of her jaw peeked past his mane. Michael glanced at his watch. 9:47 a.m. Sunlight angling just right, pouring straight into the camera lens. Perfect for casting shadows with sharp edges. Linda kept talking about bylaws, about neighbors who had concerns. Her voice carried, but the picture would say more than she knew. He caught it then, the dark outline of her body, clear against the concrete of his porch, her shadow spilling over the table leg, stretching past the first tile seam. That seam had always been the marker. Everyone in the street knew it. Michael said nothing. He only leaned on the porch rail, the same way a man leans when he's listening, but not agreeing. Atlas's head turned, not to Linda, to the lens. A slow, deliberate move that shifted the entire frame. Now her shadow wasn't just crossing the seam, it was pinned beside the lion's gaze. She adjusted her stance, oblivious. Her heel scuffed against the tile. The sound cut clean through her own sentence. Michael filed it away. Not just the image, not just the time, the sound, the movement, the angle, each a small stone in the foundation he was laying. Linda finally stepped back, certain she'd made her point. Her voice softened to that tone people use when they think they've already won. Michael stayed where he was, hands resting on the rail, the watch face catching the sun. He knew the footage she'd walk away with. He also knew what was in her frame, what she wouldn't see until it was too late. The first piece of a trap doesn't have to close. It just has to wait. 3 days later, Michael typed exactly 12 words. A subject line that read like an olive branch. Community safety discussion. Attendance requested. He CC'd everyone on the HOA roster, even the ones who hadn't picked a side, especially them. The message was polite, brief, devoid of heat. Just a, let's make sure we're aligned kind of note. He knew Linda couldn't resist. People like her needed an audience. The meeting was held in the recreation room of the community center. Fluorescent lights, a long table, folding chairs in a neat row. Michael arrived first, took the seat 3 spots from the head of the table, close enough to be heard, far enough to watch. The red paperclip was still in his pocket. He tapped it once, felt its edge press back. Linda swept in 5 minutes late, voice already pitched to Carrie. She greeted her allies first, dropped her bag, and took the chair opposite him. Someone slid her a printed agenda. She didn't look at it. The chairperson barely finished the opening before Linda leaned forward. First, I want to address the safety issue, she began. Her tone was crisp, rehearsed. Michael said nothing, just looked at her, letting the space fill. She launched into her version of the porch scene, how she'd observed Atlas, how she'd had to step closer for a better view. And then, the line he'd been waiting for. I was standing right there, on his porch, and the sentence didn't matter after that. The words on his porch had already done their work. Across the table, a neutral member of the HOA, Tom, a man who rarely spoke, shifted in his seat. Brows drew together. Michael caught it, stored it. Linda kept talking, gesturing wide. Her pen slipped from her fingers and landed squarely on the laminated map of property lines spread near the chairperson. The pen tip rested in a pale yellow block marked Harris. No one moved it. Michael waited until her momentum slowed. Then quietly he asked if the map could be brought forward. No challenge, just a request to clarify for everyone here. The map slid between them. Linda didn't notice her own pen was still there. its ink dot squarely in his lot. He didn't point it out. Didn't need to. The image was already in everyone's head. The line, the pen, the words she'd just spoken. The chairperson moved on to the next agenda item. Michael leaned back. The red paperclip pressed against his palm now. 2 blows landed without raising his voice. One in the inbox, one in the room, both still unfolding. The summons came 2 weeks later. Linda had filed a formal complaint. Dangerous animal, community risk, property encroachment. The hearing was set for a Thursday morning. Small municipal chamber, echo in every word. Rows of plastic chairs, a table for each side. Michael sat alone at his. No lawyer, just a man in a pressed shirt, watch catching the light. The red paperclip lay on the table in front of him. He rolled it once between his fingers, like it was nothing. Linda arrived with a folder thick enough to suggest victory. She didn't look at him. Not directly, not yet. The chair called the room to order. Linda was first. She laid out her claims, voice steady, eyes scanning the panel. She talked about risk. She talked about liability. She talked about having to take a closer look. Michael let her finish. Then he slid a rolled map across the table. Property survey, signed and dated. The panel leaned in. He pointed once, quiet, precise, at the seam in his porch tiles. Next came the flash drive. The clerk plugged it in. The video played on a wall screen. Atlas stood in sunlight, motionless. Mane still, eyes calm. The sound of claws clicked once against concrete, loud in the chamber's quiet. Then Linda entered the frame. 1 step, 2, shadow crossing the seam. The time stamp, 9:47 a.m. The angle perfect. Sun cutting a clean line between his space and hers. Nobody spoke. Michael leaned forward, set the red paperclip in the center of the map. "I found this on my porch," he said. No emphasis, just fact. A murmur moved through the back row. The panel compared the clip's position on the map with the seam on the video. Perfect match. Linda shifted in her seat. Her pen tapped once against her folder, then stilled. From the side row, Tom, the HOA member who had frowned in the last meeting, turned toward Michael. A single nod. The chair cleared his throat. Asked Linda if she had anything else to add. Her voice caught on the first word. She settled for no. Michael sat back. He didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the panel. The red paperclip still sat there, bright against the neutral map. The ruling was quick, complaint dismissed. Atlas was to remain undisturbed on his property. Michael touched the watch face once. In his mind, the promise came back. Atlas would always be home. And now, everyone in the room knew exactly where that home began and ended. 3 mornings later, the street was quiet. Michael sat in his chair on the porch, coffee cooling in his hand. Atlas stretched out beside him, the slow rise and fall of his breathing steady as the day. The table and chairs were back in their original place, legs aligned with the seam in the tiles. Nothing crossed it. Sunlight slid in low, catching the edge of the porch. The shadow of Atlas's mane spilled over the line, heavy and sure, covering the space where others had stood. A breeze shifted. Somewhere down the block, a door closed. No one looked this way. No one mentioned Linda. Michael didn't check his watch. Didn't need to. Time here felt older than that. The red paperclip rested in the center of the table, still, bright. Unmoved since the day he'd set it there. Atlas flicked an ear at a sound only he seemed to hear. Michael's gaze stayed on the seam in the tiles. Lines held, promises kept. The porch stayed the same table, same seam in the tiles. Morning light came in slower now. It touched the coffee cup first, then the lion's shadow. Nothing had moved, not the chairs, not the line. A red paperclip still waited on the wood. Small, ordinary. Yet it held more weight than the folder Linda had carried in. Atlas breathed deep, the kind of breath that says, safe. A few leaves scraped across the concrete, found the edge, stopped. The wind changed, carried them away. Some victories are loud, they burn fast, disappear just as quick. Others sit in the open, No banners, no noise, just the quiet proof that the line is still there, that it still holds. Sometimes, that's enough.